So PlayStation has just announced that they're going to be requiring age verification for certain online features, and by certain online features, it means pretty much any communication feature. PlayStation will ask players to verify their age later this year to continue using communication features. The protection and safety of younger audiences in the gaming community have become a priority for major companies. Not sure if this author is being sarcastic here, but I don't think that that's their priority. Recently, platforms like Discord and Roblox have introduced various age verification measures, and it appears that PlayStation will soon implement similar changes. Players will need to comply with these requirements to avoid any disruptions to their gaming experience. Before we keep reading, yeah, they're not doing age verification because they care about younger audiences. They're doing it because they want to collect our information. But anyways, PlayStation is going to lock communication features behind age verification. A new email from Sony Interactive Entertainment reveals a new age verification requirement for PlayStation users to continue using communication features. The initiative comes from the goal of providing safe, age-appropriate experiences for players and families while respecting their privacy. How can you respect someone's privacy by demanding an ID from them? But anyways, and providing meaningful control over their gaming experiences. The age verification process will be implemented globally, and players will need to verify their age to continue using PlayStation communication services, such as messages and voice chat. So yeah, they are going to play the whole argument. Well, if you guys really feel uncomfortable, you don't have to verify your age. You don't have to send us an ID, but you won't be able to talk to your friends or use voice chat. So basically, you just can't enjoy the PlayStation that you bought. All right, anyways, if the player opts not to verify their age, they can still use other services such as games, trophies, and the store. Wow, we can still play games without verifying our age? PlayStation, Sony, you guys are too kind. Thank you guys for allowing us to play games on the PlayStation that we all bought. Appreciate it. Only the communication experience will be effective if you choose not to verify your age. PlayStation didn't provide a date for when players will need to begin the verification process. Using the word only, I think, is kind of funny because obviously the communication experience is a massive part about why people buy PlayStations and consoles in general. They want to play video games with their friends or they want to make friends online. So what? Because you don't hand over an ID or some sort of AI facial scan or whatever, now you can't communicate with anybody? Oh yeah, that's a great way to protect kids. Just stop them from communicating with anyone. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. But yeah, anyways, sarcasm aside, this is the email that everybody is receiving. So it says, verify your age to keep using communication features. At Sony, we are committed to creating safe, age-appropriate experiences for players and families while respecting privacy, blah, blah, blah. As part of our compliance with global regulations, you'll need to verify your age later this year to continue using PlayStation communication features, such as messages and voice chat. Let me stop them right there. No, they are not complying with global regulations because there are no global regulations for ID age verification. There has not been some sort of law that's been passed around the world right now that has said you need to have ID age verification if, someone is playing PlayStation. Yes, there are certain select countries that are doing that. And even though we all disagree with their decision to do so, obviously, because they're trying to harvest our information and have mass surveillance around the world, it would make sense if PlayStation was implementing this in those areas. But you can't just say, oh, there are a lot of countries right now that are having ID age verification laws, therefore we're going to make it global for everybody. That makes zero sense. For example, when Discord had their whole age verification thing, they weren't actually globally required to roll it out, but they did it globally anyways. They had it first in Australia and the UK where they were actually mandated to do so, but still they made a global rollout and that was their choice to do so. Same thing with PlayStation. I don't like the way that they phrased it. They make it seem like they were forced to do this, but in fact, you only would have to do it in those countries that have those laws. Don't make it seem like there's some sort of global law for ID age verification right now because there isn't. The way we're headed, there's going to be, but we need to make sure we fight against it and stop that. But regardless, they say you'll still be able to access other PlayStation services like games, trophies, all that type of stuff. So yeah, I do find it funny that they mentioned that, almost like they're doing us a favor. Like, yeah, you guys are still going to be able to play games on the PlayStation that you bought if you don't hand us an ID. You're welcome. That's how we protect your privacy. However, you can't communicate with literally anybody. So yeah. So this is apparently going to start to be required in June of 2026, so very, very soon. And if users do not verify their age, they lose all communication features, and even through third-party communication tools such as Discord, broadcasting, sharing, streaming to YouTube or Twitch, and in-game user-generated content. Yes, that is correct. If you want to make content through your PlayStation by using it to stream on YouTube or Twitch, you will no longer be allowed to do so if you don't hand over an ID. And again, this is a global rollout in June. It's not like this is just for certain countries like Australia or the UK or whatever. This is for everybody in the world. So it is absolutely insane. And for those of you guys who are on PlayStation right now and you're a console person and you're just like, screw this, I'm just going to go over to Xbox. Well, yeah, Xbox is doing it too. So yeah, we can't escape this ID age verification crap. It is such a nightmare. So we need to make sure that we actually fight this by talking to our local representatives, emailing them, explaining to them why we disagree with this, why it's such a huge violation of privacy. I just find it crazy that for content creators, people who make their content through their PlayStation, they can no longer do so. And I assume there will be something very similar on Xbox if there isn't already. For games with their own communication or UGC tools, features such as in-game chat, messaging, and content sharing or uploading may also become unavailable. So even if you have a game that has its own communication outside of PlayStation itself, you still can't use that unless you hand over an ID. Because each title is designed differently, the specific features affected may vary by game, Sony stated. As titles update their implementations over time, additional in-game features may become restricted for users who have not verified their age. So basically, they're saying, okay, so we have already restricted your communication if you don't want to hand over an ID and let us harvest your data. But yeah, by the way, this is likely going to get worse in the future because we're just going to keep restricting more and more features to the point where you're not even going to be able to use your PlayStation properly. So they are essentially giving you an ultimatum like, yeah, just hand over your ID or you're essentially not going to be able to use your PlayStation. Sony uses Yoti for age verification, which is the same service Microsoft uses for Xbox. Microsoft began implementing age verification in July, soon after the OSA was introduced. The reason why I'm laughing is because Sony uses Yoti. I wonder if anyone has made a video about Yoti having some sort of data breach. Oh, right, yeah, I did. So basically, Yoti, the company that PlayStation is going to be using to mandate global age verification across planet Earth, they have already been fined by a government, Spain in particular, for mishandling biometric data and consent failures in its age verification app. Yes, that is correct. They have already been fined. They've already lost the court case and they have already had to pay some money. And obviously, it was not enough money. It should have been like $950 billion or whatever. They have already been fined and proven wrong in court for mishandling biometric data, yet Sony is still going to be using them specifically for global ID verification. It is insane. Think about the fact, as I said earlier, that Sony doesn't even have to do a global rollout, but they're still doing it for PlayStation, not because they have to, like they implied. No, it's because they want everybody's information. Yoti literally describes itself as, building the world's trusted identity platform, privacy-focused identity and age assurance solutions, and they are also going with the narrative that this is all for kids and they're trying to protect the kids. Well, that doesn't make any sense because as we've discovered, Yoti has been mishandling that biometric information, harvesting it and sending it around and basically making it so you actually don't have any access to that information anymore. And they were fined for excessive data retention as well. They were keeping your information way longer than they were saying. And why would they even need to keep your information to begin with? They're just using it to verify your age, right? So after that's done, why don't they delete it? Well, just like most ID age verification vendors, yes, Persona included, these guys always end up lying about how long they're going to be keeping your information for. They had like multiple violations, their first being biometric special category data, where they were doing like a crazy facial scan where they were doing like physical, physiological, or behavioral characteristics of a person and stuff like that. And they were investigated by something called the AEPD, and they were found to be in multiple violations of several different laws, all with the mishandling of your information. They were either storing it too long or analyzing it too hard, just basically lying to you about everything that you gave them. You were so vulnerable and you gave them all your information and they're mishandling it and using it for their malicious means. It is insane to me that Sony and PlayStation, by extension, are now going ahead and still working with these guys, even though they've already been fined for mishandling biometric data. And it just goes to show, I mean, with all of these types of things, like their second violation was pre-ticked consent boxes for R&D. This all is about like the same stuff. Obviously, it's the mass surveillance. Obviously, it's the control. They want everybody's information. They want to harvest it so nobody can remain anonymous anymore. But it's also because of this AI crap that's going on in the world right now. Yoti and all these ID age verification vendors want to use your information to train AI models. They're going to be selling your information, their findings of the analysis of your face and your jawline and the angle of your nose or something like that, like they're a manga artist or something. They're going to be selling all that information to these AI facial companies or whatever so they can train their models off your data. So AI is going to become even more and more indiscernible from actual real human being. That is what this whole push of ID age verification is about. It is about trying to take everybody's information to prep for this AI world that we're going to be living in. And that bubble can't pop fast enough, but that's a different conversation. Point is that it's not for the kids like they always say that crap. We all know it's not for the kids. They are just trying to take everybody's information. Shame on PlayStation, shame on Sony for using these guys as their ID age verification vendor, despite the fact that they have literally been found guilty from a government investigation for mishandling biometric data. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on the situation in the comments. PlayStation will be rolling out this mandatory ID age verification starting June of 2026. And according to the articles talking about it, it won't just be communication that you will lose. Eventually, you may lose pretty much every feature on PlayStation. So much corruption around the world, man. But yeah, please leave a like in the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more. See ya.